The gunshot echoed through the canyon a full minute before the man stumbled into view. His left hand pressed against his side where blood seeped between his fingers, staining his shirt a deep crimson that looked black in the fading twilight of the Arizona desert. Willa Reynolds had just finished hanging the last of her laundry on the line behind her small adobe house when she heard the heavy, uneven footsteps approaching, followed by the dull thud of a body hitting her wooden porch. She dropped the clothespin she was holding and rushed around to the front of her house, her heart hammering in her chest. The man sprawled across her doorstep was face down, his breathing shallow and labored. Blood pooled beneath him, seeping into the dry wood of the porch her father had built 10 years ago, before the fever took him and left her alone in this harsh land. Willa knelt beside the stranger, her hands trembling as she turned him over carefully. He was young, perhaps 25 at most, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and a strong jaw covered in several days' worth of stubble. His eyes were closed, his face pale beneath the layer of dust that coated his skin. She recognized the signs of severe blood loss immediately, having helped her father tend to injured ranch hands more times than she cared to remember. "Can you hear me?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. The man's eyelids fluttered but did not open. She had to make a decision, and she had to make it fast. Leaving him out here would mean certain death, but bringing an injured stranger into her home could mean danger of an entirely different kind. Still, Willa had never been one to turn her back on someone in need. She grabbed him under the arms and dragged him inside, her muscles straining with the effort. At 22 years old, she was stronger than she looked, hardened by 3 years of living alone on the outskirts of Snowflake, Arizona, making her living as a seamstress and occasional nurse to anyone who could pay. The man groaned as she maneuvered him onto her kitchen table, sweeping aside the half-finished dress she had been working on. Willa lit 2 more oil lamps and positioned them on either side of the table, flooding the small kitchen with warm light. She cut away his shirt with her sewing scissors, revealing the bullet wound in his left side, just below his ribs. The entry wound was clean, but when she carefully turned him to check his back, she found no exit wound. The bullet was still inside him. "Lord help me," she whispered, though she had not prayed much since her father died. She washed her hands thoroughly in the basin, then retrieved her father's old medical kit from the shelf. Inside were the tools he had collected over years of frontier living: a probe, forceps, needles, catgut thread, and a bottle of whiskey for sterilization. The man's breathing grew more ragged as she worked, cleaning the wound with whiskey-soaked cloth. His eyes suddenly snapped open, wide and unfocused, the color a startling gray-green that reminded her of sagebrush after rain. "Easy now," Willa said softly, placing a hand on his chest. "You have been shot. The bullet is still inside. I need to get it out or you will die. Who are you?" He managed to gasp, his voice rough and strained. "My name is Willa Reynolds. This is my home. You collapsed on my doorstep." She poured whiskey over the probe and forceps, then looked him directly in the eyes. "This is going to hurt terribly. I have laudanum if you want it." He shook his head slightly. "No, need to stay alert. They might come." "Who might come?" Willa asked, but the man's eyes had already rolled back, consciousness slipping away again. She could not wait any longer. She took a deep breath, said a silent prayer, and began to probe the wound. The man groaned and thrashed, his body arching off the table. Willa pressed her forearm across his chest, using her weight to hold him down while her other hand worked the probe deeper into the wound, searching for the bullet. Sweat beaded on her forehead and upper lip as she concentrated, feeling for the telltale resistance of metal against metal. There. She felt it. The bullet had lodged against a rib, which had likely saved his life by preventing it from penetrating deeper into his vital organs. She withdrew the probe and picked up the forceps, her hands steady now that she knew where she was going. One chance. She would likely only get one chance before he bled out or went into shock. The forceps slid into the wound, following the path she had mapped with the probe. The man screamed, a raw sound that tore through the quiet night. Willa's jaw clenched as she felt the forceps close around the bullet. She pulled slowly and steadily, feeling the resistance as the metal extracted from flesh and bone. Then, suddenly, it was free. She dropped the bloody bullet into a tin cup with a metallic clink and immediately pressed clean cloth against the wound to stanch the renewed bleeding. After several minutes, the flow slowed enough for her to begin stitching. Her hands moved with practiced precision, the same steady movements she used when sewing fine stitches on wedding dresses and Sunday suits. By the time she finished, the sky outside her window had turned completely black. The man lay unconscious on her table, his chest rising and falling in a more regular rhythm now. She had done all she could. Whether he lived or died was up to his own strength, and perhaps the God she had stopped believing in 3 years ago. Willa cleaned and bandaged the wound, then covered him with a quilt. She could not move him to her bed. He was too heavy and she was exhausted. Instead, she fashioned a pallet on the floor beside the table and settled there with her father's old rifle across her lap. If someone came looking for this man, she would be ready. Sleep claimed her in fits and starts, her body jerking awake at every small sound. In one of these wakeful moments, she studied the man's face in the lamplight. He had strong features, handsome in a rough-hewn way. There was something about the set of his jaw that spoke of determination, of a man who did not give up easily. She noticed scars, old ones, scattered across his chest and arms. This was not the first time he had been injured, not by a long shot. As dawn light began to filter through her curtains, the man stirred. His eyes opened slowly, blinking against the light. He turned his head, taking in his surroundings with obvious confusion, before his gaze settled on Willa, still sitting on the floor with the rifle. "You are still here," he said, his voice hoarse. "It is my house," Willa replied, setting the rifle aside and standing. Her back protested the movement after a night on the hard floor. "How do you feel?" "Like I have been shot," he said, attempting a weak smile. "Thank you, you saved my life." "You are not out of danger yet. The wound could still become infected." She poured water from her pitcher into a cup and helped him drink. "What is your name?" He hesitated, and in that hesitation, Willa understood that this man was running from something or someone. "Aaron," he finally said. "Aaron Quinn." "Well, Aaron Quinn, who shot you." Aaron closed his eyes. "That is a complicated story." "I imagine it is," Willa said dryly. "I have time to hear it, seeing as how you will be laid up in my kitchen for the foreseeable future." Over the next hour, as the sun climbed higher in the Arizona sky, Aaron told her his story. He had been part of a gang, the Garfield Gang, named after their leader, a brutal man named Dutch Garfield. Aaron had joined them 5 years ago when he was barely 20, desperate and angry after his family's ranch had been taken by corrupt bankers. He thought he was fighting against injustice, but he quickly learned that Dutch cared nothing for justice. The gang robbed banks and trains, and Dutch did not care who got hurt in the process. 3 days ago, we robbed a bank in Hallbrook, Aaron said, his voice thick with shame. There was a woman there with a child, a little boy no more than 5 years old. Dutch pointed his gun at them, threatened to shoot them if the bank manager did not open the safe faster. I could not stand it anymore. I told Dutch to leave them alone, that we had the money, we should just go. He turned the gun on me instead. Said I had gone soft, that I was not fit to ride with them anymore. He shot you, Willa said quietly. Yes. His second-in-command, a man named Carl, he helped me, gave me his horse and told me to ride. Said he had been wanting to leave too, but he had a family to think about. He told me to head south, that there was a small town called Snowflake where Dutch would not think to look. I rode for 2 days before the pain, and the blood loss got to be too much. I saw your house and thought maybe, just maybe, I could ask for help. I did not make it to the door before I collapsed. Willa absorbed this information, studying Aaron's face for signs of deception. She had always been good at reading people, a skill her father had taught her. Aaron's eyes held genuine remorse, and the shame in his voice when he spoke of the gang's crimes seemed real. So Dutch Garfield thinks you are dead, she said, probably. Or dying somewhere in the desert. I doubt he will come looking for me. I am not worth the effort. Aaron tried to shift his position and winced in pain. But I cannot promise that. If you want me to leave, I understand. You have already done more than enough. Willa stood and moved to the stove, beginning to prepare breakfast. You would die if you left now. The wound needs time to heal. Besides, I do not think you are in any condition to argue with me. A ghost of a smile crossed Aaron's face. No, madam, I suppose I am not. Over the following days, an unusual routine developed. Willa tended to Aaron's wound twice daily, checking for signs of infection and changing the bandages. She fed him broth at first, then more substantial meals as his strength began to return. He slept on her kitchen table for 3 days before he was strong enough to move to a proper bed. Willa gave him her room and took the small cot in the corner that she normally used for storage. Aaron proved to be a model patient, never complaining despite the obvious pain he was in. He told her stories of growing up on his family's ranch in New Mexico territory, of learning to rope cattle from his father and bake bread from his mother. He spoke of his younger sister, Clara, who had died of scarlet fever when she was just 12. The grief in his voice when he mentioned her was so raw that Willa found herself reaching out to squeeze his hand in comfort. In turn, Willa told him about her own life. She had grown up in Snowflake, the daughter of the town's doctor, Malcolm Reynolds. Her mother had died giving birth to her, something her father never spoke of, but that Willa had always felt as a shadow over their relationship. When she was 19, her father contracted pneumonia during a harsh winter and died within a week, leaving her alone with the house and a small amount of savings. "Why did you stay?" Aaron asked one evening as Willa sat beside his bed, mending one of her own dresses by lamplight. A young woman alone in a frontier town, it cannot be easy. It is not, Willa admitted, her needle moving in steady, practiced strokes. But this is my home. My father is buried here in the cemetery on the hill. I have a small business as a seamstress, and people know they can come to me when they are injured or sick, though I am not a real doctor. I get by. You are more than a seamstress, Aaron said quietly. You are a healer. You have a gift. Willa felt heat rise to her cheeks at the compliment. I only know what my father taught me. He was the real doctor. And he taught you well. I would be dead if not for you. Their eyes met across the small room, and Willa felt something shift in her chest, a flutter she had not experienced in a long time. She looked away quickly, returning her attention to her sewing. She could not afford to develop feelings for this man. He was an outlaw, running from his past. Once he healed, he would leave and she would be alone again. That was simply the way of things. But as the days turned into weeks, that resolve became harder to maintain. Aaron was kind and thoughtful, insisting on helping with chores as soon as he was able to stand for more than a few minutes at a time. He chopped wood for her stove, though she scolded him for straining his wound. He repaired the broken hinge on her front door and fixed the leak in her roof that she had been ignoring for months. You should be resting, Willa said, exasperated, when she came home from delivering a finished dress to find Aaron in her yard, mending her fence. "I have been resting for 3 weeks," Aaron replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I am going to go mad if I do not do something useful. Besides, I owe you more than I could ever repay. Let me help." "You owe me nothing," Willa insisted. "I helped you because it was the right thing to do, not because I expected payment." Aaron set down his tools and walked over to her, moving carefully to avoid straining his healing wound. "I know that. That is what makes you remarkable. Most people in this world only do things when they expect something in return. You are different." He was standing close now, close enough that Willa could see the flecks of gold in his gray-green eyes. Her heart hammered in her chest, and she took a step back, needing distance. "I should start dinner," she said quickly, and hurried into the house before Aaron could respond. That night, as they sat across from each other at the small kitchen table, eating the stew Willa had prepared, the tension between them was palpable. Willa kept her eyes on her plate, hyper-aware of every movement Aaron made. "Willa," Aaron said finally, setting down his spoon, "I need to talk to you about something." She looked up, meeting his serious gaze. "What is it?" "I am well enough to travel now. The wound has healed cleanly, thanks to your care. I should leave, head west maybe, start over somewhere new. Every day I stay here I put you at risk. If Dutch or any of the others from the gang somehow found out I was here, they might come for me. I could not live with myself if you were hurt because of me." Willa's hands tightened around her fork. She had known this moment would come, had tried to prepare herself for it. Still, the actual words felt like a physical blow. "When will you go?" she managed to ask. "Tomorrow morning, if that is all right. I will need to borrow a horse, but I will send payment for it as soon as I can find work somewhere. You can take my father's horse. He is old but still strong, and you do not need to send payment." Willa stood abruptly, needing to move to do something with the sudden surge of emotion. "I will pack some food for you to take." Aaron stood as well, reaching out to catch her wrist gently. "Willa, wait, please." She stopped but did not turn around. If she looked at him now, she feared she might cry, and she had not cried since her father's death. "I do not want to leave," Aaron said, his voice rough with emotion. "These past weeks with you, they have been the happiest I have had in 5 years. You have shown me that there is still goodness in the world, that I might still deserve a second chance. But I cannot ask you to tie yourself to a man with my past. You deserve better than that." Willa turned slowly to face him. "You not think I should be the one to decide what I deserve?" "I think you are too kind for your own good," Aaron said, but there was a slight smile on his face. "Too willing to see the best in people. I see the man you are now, not the boy you were when you made mistakes," Willa said firmly. "I see a man who feels genuine remorse for his actions, who wants to be better. That is the man I have come to know." "You barely know me," Aaron protested weakly. "I know that you are gentle when you handle the horses. I know that you fix things without being asked. I know that you have nightmares about the people the gang hurt, and that you wake up with their names on your lips. I know that you check the door 3 times every night to make sure it is locked because you are terrified that Dutch will come, and I will be hurt because of you. I know that you have not touched a drop of whiskey even though you clearly want it, because you say you need to keep your wits about you to protect me." Willa took a breath. "So do not tell me I do not know you, Aaron Quinn." Aaron stared at her, his expression a mixture of wonder and disbelief. "How do you know all that?" "Because I pay attention," Willa said simply. "And because I care about you, more than I should probably, but there it is." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words. Then Aaron closed the distance between them in 2 long strides and cupped her face in his hands. "I care about you too, so much that it terrifies me. I have never felt this way about anyone." Then stay, Willa whispered. We will figure out the rest together. Aaron's answer was to kiss her, a gentle pressing of lips that sent warmth flooding through Willa's entire body. She leaned into him, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palms. The kiss deepened, becoming more urgent, 5 weeks of denied attraction finally finding release. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Aaron rested his forehead against hers. I will stay, but I need to do this properly. I need to make amends for what I have done, find a way to build a real life here. I do not want to hide from my past, I want to leave it behind legitimately. How will you do that? Willa asked. I do not know yet, but I will figure it out. Aaron kissed her forehead gently. With you beside me, I believe I can do anything. The next morning, instead of packing to leave, Aaron rode into Snowflake proper to speak with the town marshal. Willa had wanted to go with him, but he insisted this was something he needed to do alone. She spent the hours he was gone in an agony of worry, unable to focus on her sewing, pacing the small confines of her house. When Aaron finally returned in the late afternoon, Willa ran out to meet him. His expression was serious but not despairing, which she took as a good sign. What happened? She asked as he dismounted. I told Marshal Garrett everything, Aaron said. About the Garfield gang, about the robberies I was part of, about Dutch shooting me when I tried to leave. He said he would need to send telegrams to the territorial authorities, see if there are any warrants out for my arrest specifically. Willa's stomach dropped. They could arrest you. Yes, they could, but Marshal Garrett seems like a fair man. He said if I cooperate fully, provide information about the gang's operations and whereabouts, the authorities might be willing to offer leniency in exchange for my testimony against Dutch and the others. It is not a guarantee, but it is a chance. Over the following weeks, Aaron worked closely with the marshal, providing detailed information about the Garfield gang's hideouts, their patterns, the banks and trains they had robbed. He sketched maps and wrote out everything he could remember about the gang's operations. Marshal Garrett sent all of this information to the territorial marshal in Prescott, and they waited. During this time, Aaron and Willa grew even closer. She began teaching him to read better. He had only basic literacy from his childhood schooling. In return, he taught her to shoot, insisting that a woman living alone needed to know how to defend herself properly. They took long walks in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's quirks and habits. The first time Aaron kissed her in public, outside the general store where Willa had been picking up thread, the town gossips had a field day. Willa's friend, Sarah Mitchell, cornered her the next day while she was hanging laundry. Willa Reynolds, you tell me everything right now, Sarah demanded, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Where did that handsome man come from, and why have you been hiding him? Willa had prepared for this. She and Aaron had agreed on a version of the truth that omitted the most damaging details. His name is Aaron Quinn. He was injured and I treated him. He decided to stay in Snowflake. Injured how? Sarah pressed. Accident while traveling. He fell from his horse. The lie tasted bitter on Willa's tongue, but it was necessary. If the whole town knew Aaron had been part of an outlaw gang, they would run him out before the territorial marshal even made a decision about his case. Sarah studied her friend's face. You care about him? Yes, Willa admitted. I do, very much. Then I am happy for you, Sarah said, squeezing Willa's hand. You have been alone too long. You deserve happiness. If only it were that simple, Willa thought. But she smiled and thanked her friend and tried not to worry about what would happen when the marshal's reply finally came. Aaron found work with a rancher named Thomas Blackwell, who needed help with his cattle operation. The work was hard and the pay modest, but Aaron threw himself into it with determination. He was trying to prove, both to the town and to himself, that he could be a productive, law-abiding citizen. 2 months after Aaron had first walked into the marshal's office, a reply finally came from Prescott. Marshal Garrett called Aaron in immediately. Willa insisted on going with him this time, and Aaron did not argue. They walked into the marshal's office hand in hand. Marshal Garrett was a grizzled man in his 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. He looked at the young couple standing before him and sighed. "Well, Mr. Quinn, I have news. The territorial marshal has reviewed your case. You are wanted for participation in 3 bank robberies and 1 train robbery. Those are serious charges." Willa felt Aaron's hand tighten around hers, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "I understand, sir. I am prepared to face the consequences of my actions. However," the marshal continued, "in light of your cooperation and the valuable information you have provided, the territorial marshal is willing to offer you a deal. You will need to testify against Dutch Garfield and the other members of his gang when they are apprehended. In exchange, you will serve 2 years in the territorial prison in Yuma." 2 years. It felt like a lifetime and no time at all. Willa's mind reeled, trying to process what this meant. "There is one more condition," Marshal Garrett said. "You need to make restitution. The banks that were robbed, they want their money back. The territorial marshal estimates your share of the stolen money to be around $3,000. You will need to pay that back." Aaron's face paled. "Marshal, I do not have that kind of money. I spent what little I had just surviving. It will take me years to save that much." The territorial marshal is aware of that. They are willing to set up a payment plan. You will work, and a portion of your wages will be garnished until the debt is paid. It might take 10 years, maybe more, but it is possible. "And if I agree to all of this?" Aaron asked. "Then you report to Yuma prison 1 month from today. You serve your 2 years, you pay back the money, and when you are done, your slate is clean. You get a fresh start, Mr. Quinn. That is more than most men in your position can hope for." Aaron was silent for a long moment, absorbing this information. Then he nodded. "I will do it. Thank you, Marshal. You have been more than fair." Outside the marshal's office, Willa finally let the tears come. Aaron pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "I am sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I am so sorry." "Do not apologize," Willa said fiercely, pulling back to look at him. "You are doing the right thing. 2 years is not forever. I will wait for you." "Willa, you cannot put your life on hold for 2 years waiting for a man who might not be the same person when he comes back. You should move on, find someone without my baggage." Willa grabbed his face in both her hands, making him look at her. "Aaron Quinn, I love you. Do you understand that? I love you, and I am going to wait for you, and when you come back, we are going to build a life together. That is the end of this discussion." It was the first time either of them had said those words. Aaron's eyes widened, then filled with tears. "I love you too. God, Willa, I love you so much." They stood there on the dusty street of Snowflake, holding each other and crying, while curious townspeople watched from windows and doorways. Willa did not care what anyone thought. Let them stare. She had found something precious, and she was not going to let it go without a fight. The next month passed in a blur of preparation and precious stolen moments. Aaron worked extra hours at the ranch, saving every penny he could to leave Willa with something. She protested, saying she had her sewing business and would be fine, but Aaron was adamant. "I need to know you will be taken care of," he said stubbornly. "Please, let me do this." They spent their evenings together, sometimes talking, sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. Aaron finished building a new chicken coop for Willa's hens, a project he had started weeks ago. He repaired everything in and around her house that might need attention while he was gone, trying to anticipate problems before they arose. 3 days before Aaron was due to leave for Yuma, Willa woke with a sense of determination. She found Aaron in the yard, grooming her father's horse, and walked straight up to him. "Marry me," she said without preamble. Aaron's hand stilled on the horse's flank. He turned to stare at her. "What, marry me, before you leave?" "I know it is not traditional for the woman to propose, and I know the timing is terrible, but I do not care. I want to be your wife. I want you to have something to hold on to while you are in that place, the knowledge that someone is waiting for you, that you have a home and a wife to come back to." Aaron set down the brush and walked over to her, his expression unreadable. "Willa, are you sure? Being married to a convict, it will not be easy. People will talk. People already talk. Let them." "I am sure, Aaron. I have never been more sure of anything in my life." A slow smile spread across Aaron's face, transforming it from handsome to beautiful. "Then yes. Yes, I will marry you. I would be honored to be your husband." They were married 2 days later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Snowflake. Sarah Mitchell and her husband stood as witnesses. Willa wore a simple dress she had made herself, pale blue cotton with white lace at the collar and cuffs. Aaron wore the one good suit he had purchased with his ranch wages, looking handsome and nervous. The Reverend, an elderly man named Pastor Williams, performed the brief ceremony. When Aaron slipped a simple gold band onto Willa's finger, his hands were shaking. Willa looked up at him, her heart so full she thought it might burst, and spoke her vows clearly and firmly. "I take you, Aaron Quinn, to be my husband. I promise to love you, to stand by you, to wait for you however long it takes. I promise to build a home and a life with you, to be your partner in all things. This I swear before God and these witnesses." Aaron's voice was thick with emotion when he spoke his own vows. "I take you, Willa Reynolds, to be my wife. I promise to honor you, to work every day to be worthy of the faith you have placed in me. I promise to come back to you, to build the life you deserve. I promise to love you until my last breath. This I swear before God and these witnesses." When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Aaron kissed her with a tenderness that brought tears to Willa's eyes. They had one night together as a married couple before Aaron had to leave for Yuma. That night, in the small house that was now their home, Aaron and Willa consummated their marriage with a mixture of passion and desperate tenderness. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, neither wanting to sleep and waste these precious remaining hours. "Tell me about the future," Aaron whispered, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "Tell me what our life will be like when I come back." Willa nestled closer to him. "We will finish fixing up this house, make it truly ours, maybe add a room or two if we can afford it. You will work the ranch and I will keep sewing. We will save money, pay off your debt, and maybe, if we are blessed, we will start a family." "I want that," Aaron said softly. "I want all of that with you. Children with your strength and kindness, a home filled with love. I will work every day in that prison thinking about coming back to you, to the life we are going to build together." 2 years will pass, Willa said, trying to convince herself as much as him. "We will write letters. I will come visit when I can manage the journey. We will get through this, Aaron. Together, even when we are apart, we are together." The next morning, they rode together to the stage stop where Aaron would begin his journey to Yuma. Marshal Garrett was there, having agreed to escort Aaron to the prison personally. The marshal was a decent man and seemed to respect the commitment Aaron was showing to making amends. Willa and Aaron's goodbye was wrenching. They held each other for a long time, neither wanting to let go. Finally, Aaron pulled back, cupping Willa's face in his hands. 2 years, he said. "I will count every single day, and when I come back to you, I will spend the rest of my life making you happy." "You already make me happy," Willa said, tears streaming down her face. Come back to me, Aaron Quinn. That is all I ask. I will, I promise. One final kiss, long and desperate, and then Aaron climbed into the stage. Willa stood there as it pulled away, watching until it disappeared over the horizon, one hand pressed against her chest where her heart felt like it was being torn in two. The next 2 years were the longest of Willa's life. She threw herself into her work, taking on more sewing projects than ever before. The wives and daughters of Snowflake kept her busy with orders for dresses, shirts, and alterations. She saved every penny she could, planning for when Aaron returned. True to his word, Aaron wrote to her every week. The letters were sometimes short, just a few lines about prison life that he tried to keep light so she would not worry. Other times they were longer, filled with memories of their time together and dreams for the future. Willa kept every single letter in a wooden box under her bed, reading them over and over when she felt lonely. Willa managed to make the journey to Yuma twice during Aaron's imprisonment. The prison was a harsh, forbidding place, all stone walls and iron bars, baking under the relentless Arizona sun. Seeing Aaron in prison clothes, his face thinner and his eyes tired, broke her heart. But when he saw her, his whole face would light up, and they would spend their allotted visiting time talking, holding hands across a wooden table under the watchful eyes of guards. "You look beautiful," Aaron said during her second visit, about 18 months into his sentence. "How is everything at home?" "Good. The house is standing. The chickens are producing. I have more sewing work than I can handle." Willa squeezed his hands. "Sarah has been a wonderful friend. She checks on me regularly, makes sure I am eating properly. The whole town has been kinder than I expected." "Do they know where I am?" Aaron asked carefully. "Most suspect. I have not hidden it. I told anyone who asked that you are in Yuma prison, paying for past mistakes. Some people are judgmental, but most seem to respect that you are taking responsibility." Willa smiled. "You would be surprised how many people have said they are looking forward to you coming home. Mr. Blackwell told me just last week that he wants to hire you back at the ranch when you return." Aaron's eyes filled with tears. "I do not deserve you. I do not deserve any of this kindness." "Yes, you do," Willa said firmly. "You made mistakes, Aaron, but you are a good man. You are proving that every day by serving your time with dignity, by not becoming bitter or angry. I am so proud of you." The guard announced that visiting time was over. Aaron and Willa stood, and he pulled her into his arms for one brief embrace before the guards separated them. "I love you," Aaron called as he was led back to his cell. "Only 6 more months, Willa. 6 more months and I will be home." "I love you too," Willa called back. "I will be waiting." The final 6 months crawled by agonizingly slowly. Willa prepared for Aaron's return with meticulous care. She cleaned the house from top to bottom, bought new curtains, and made sure the larder was stocked. She even splurged on a new quilt for their bed, stitching it by hand with a pattern of interlocking rings that symbolized marriage and eternal love. Finally, the day came. Willa stood at the same stage stop where she had said goodbye 2 years earlier, her heart hammering with anticipation. The stage was late and every minute felt like an hour. Then, finally, she saw dust on the horizon. The stage pulled up and Aaron stepped out. He looked older, the lines around his eyes deeper, his face weathered by hard labor under the harsh prison sun. But when his eyes found Willa in the small crowd, they filled with such joy and love that all the years and hardship seemed to fall away. "Willa," he breathed, and then she was running to him, throwing herself into his arms. Aaron caught her and held her tightly, his face buried in her hair. "I am home. I am finally home." "Welcome back," Willa whispered, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Welcome home, my love." They stayed locked in that embrace for a long time, oblivious to the other passengers and townspeople watching with varying degrees of curiosity and approval. Finally, they pulled apart just enough to kiss, a kiss that held 2 years of longing and separation. The first weeks of Aaron's return were an adjustment for both of them. He had nightmares from his time in prison, waking in the dark hours convinced he was back in his cell. Willa would wake with him, holding him and speaking softly until he remembered where he was, remembered that he was free, that he was home with his wife. Aaron also had to readjust to normal life. Simple things, like choosing what to eat or when to work, felt overwhelming after 2 years of rigid prison routine. But gradually, day by day, he settled back into life in Snowflake. True to his word, Mr. Blackwell hired Aaron back at the ranch, this time with higher wages since Aaron had proven himself to be a skilled and reliable worker before his imprisonment. Aaron worked hard, knowing that every dollar he earned brought him closer to paying off his debt to the banks. Life developed a comfortable rhythm. Aaron would leave for the ranch before dawn and return in the evening, tired but satisfied with honest work. Willa continued her sewing, though she cut back on her hours now that Aaron was bringing in steady income. They spent their evenings together, talking, rating, or simply sitting close, treasuring the simple gift of being together. 6 months after Aaron's return, Willa began to feel unwell in the mornings. At first she thought it was just something she ate, but when the nausea persisted for weeks, accompanied by unusual fatigue, she began to suspect. Sarah, who had 4 children of her own, took one look at Willa's face and knew. "You are expecting, are not you?" Sarah asked, a knowing smile on her face. Willa nodded, unable to keep the joy from her expression. "I think so. I have not told Aaron yet. I wanted to be certain." "Oh, you are certain," Sarah said, laughing. "I know that look. How do you feel about it?" "Terrified," Willa admitted. "But also happier than I can express. We have talked about children, but I did not think it would happen so soon." "Life has a way of moving forward whether we are ready or not," Sarah said wisely. "Aaron will be thrilled. Any fool can see how much that man loves you." That evening, Willa prepared Aaron's favorite meal and waited nervously for him to come home. When he walked through the door, dusty and tired from a day of ranch work, she nearly lost her nerve. But then he smiled at her, that warm smile that still made her heart flutter, and she knew she could not wait. "I have something to tell you," she said after they had finished eating. Aaron looked up from his plate, concern crossing his face at her serious tone. "What is it? Is something wrong?" "No, nothing is wrong. Actually, something is very right." Willa took a deep breath. "Aaron, I am going to have a baby. We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Aaron just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face, growing wider and wider until he was grinning like a fool. He stood so quickly he nearly knocked over his chair and pulled Willa into his arms. "We are going to have a baby," he repeated, wonder in his voice. "Willa, we are going to be parents." "Yes," Willa said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Are you happy?" "Happy. I am beyond happy. I am ecstatic. I am terrified. I am everything all at once." Aaron pulled back to look at her, his hands cupping her face gently. "You have given me so much, a second chance, a home, your love. And now this. I do not have words for how grateful I am." "You do not need words," Willa said, covering his hands with hers. "Just love us. Love our child. That is all I ask." "That is the easiest promise I have ever made," Aaron said, and kissed her with infinite tenderness. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Willa did have bouts of morning sickness that left her exhausted. Aaron was attentive and protective, sometimes overly so, insisting she rest more and work less. Willa tolerated his hovering with good humor, knowing it came from a place of love and concern. As her belly grew, the reality of impending parenthood became more tangible. Aaron built a cradle in the evenings, working by lamplight to get every detail perfect. Willa sewed tiny gowns and blankets, marveling at how small the clothes were. 7 months into the pregnancy, disaster nearly struck. Willa was hanging laundry when she felt a sudden sharp pain in her abdomen, followed by a gush of warm liquid. Panic seized her as she realized her water had broken far too early. Sarah, who had stopped by to visit, immediately took charge. "Get inside now. I need to examine you." Someone run for the doctor in Holbrook. Willa's labor was long and difficult. The baby was coming too early and both mother and child were in danger. Aaron arrived home from the ranch to find his house full of women, Sarah and several others from town who had come to help. He was barred from the bedroom where Willa labored, forced to wait in agonizing ignorance while the woman he loved fought for her life and their child's. Hours passed. Aaron paced the floor, prayed to a God he had largely ignored for years, and listened to Willa's cries of pain with mounting desperation. Just when he thought he could not bear it any longer, he heard it, the thin, reedy cry of a newborn baby. Sarah emerged from the bedroom, her face tired but smiling. "You have a son, Aaron. A small one, but he is breathing and fighting. Willa is asking for you." Aaron burst into the bedroom to find Willa propped up in bed, pale and exhausted, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up when he entered, tears streaming down her face. "Our son," she whispered. "He is early and he is small, but he is ours." Aaron knelt beside the bed, gazing in wonder at the tiny face peeking out from the blankets. The baby was indeed small, smaller than he had imagined a baby could be, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that were trying to focus. 10 tiny fingers curled and uncurled. Aaron reached out with one finger, and the baby's hand closed around it with surprising strength. "He is perfect," Aaron said, his voice choked with emotion. "What should we name him?" Willa had been thinking about this. "I want to name him after my father, Malcolm. Malcolm Quinn." "Malcolm," Aaron repeated, testing the name. "I like it. Hello, Malcolm. I am your father, and I promise you, I am going to spend every day trying to be worthy of being your pa." The baby made a small sound, almost like he was responding, and both parents laughed through their tears. The next few weeks were challenging. Malcolm was small and struggled to nurse at first, but with Sarah's guidance and Willa's determination, he gradually grew stronger. Aaron took time off from the ranch, unwilling to leave his wife and son during this vulnerable time. Mr. Blackwell, who had children of his own, understood and told Aaron to take all the time he needed. Aaron proved to be a devoted father. He would pace the floor with Malcolm at all hours of the night when the baby was fussy, singing old songs his own mother had taught him. He changed diapers without complaint and stared at his son with such open adoration that it made Willa's heart melt. "You are a natural," she told him one evening, watching him rock Malcolm to sleep. "I never thought I would have this," Aaron said quietly, not taking his eyes off the sleeping baby. "A family, a home, a life worth living. There were times in prison when I was not sure I would survive, when the despair was so crushing I wanted to give up. But I thought about you, about the life we were going to build together, and it kept me going. And now here we are with this perfect little person we created together. It feels like a dream." "It is real," Willa assured him. "This is our life now, our beautiful, imperfect, real life." As Malcolm grew, so did the Quinn family's standing in the Snowflake community. People who had been skeptical of Aaron began to warm to him as they saw how devoted he was to his wife and son, how hard he worked to support them and pay off his debt. Aaron became known as a man who had made mistakes but owned them, who was working every day to be better. On Malcolm's first birthday, the Quinn house was filled with friends and neighbors celebrating. Sarah and her family came, as did Mr. Blackwell and several other ranch families. Even Marshall Garrett stopped by, bringing a wooden rocking horse he had carved himself. "For young Malcolm," the marshal said, setting the toy down, "every boy needs a good horse." Aaron shook the marshal's hand warmly. "Thank you, Marshal, for everything. If you had not given me a chance to make amends, I would not have this life." "You gave yourself a chance, son," Marshal Garrett said. "I just pointed you in the right direction. What you did with that chance, that was all you." As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Willa and Aaron stood together on their porch, watching Malcolm play with his new rocking horse under Sarah's watchful eye. "We have a good life," Willa said, leaning against Aaron's shoulder. "We have the best life," Aaron agreed. "And it is only going to get better." The years passed peacefully. Aaron continued working at the Blackwell Ranch, eventually becoming the foreman, a position of respect and responsibility. The steady income allowed them to make significant progress on Aaron's debt. By the time Malcolm turned 5, more than half of the $3,000 had been paid back. Willa's sewing business continued to thrive, and she became known throughout the territory for the quality of her work. She even received orders from as far away as Phoenix and Tucson, wealthy women wanting her to create special gowns for weddings and important events. Malcolm grew into a bright, curious boy with his father's gray-green eyes and his mother's stubborn determination. Aaron taught him to ride, to rope, to be kind to animals and respectful to people. Willa taught him to read and write, to appreciate beauty in the world, to think before he acted. When Malcolm was 6, Willa became pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, and when the time came, she delivered a healthy baby girl they named Clara, after Aaron's sister. Aaron wept when he held his daughter for the first time, overwhelmed with emotion at being able to honor his sister's memory this way. "She would have loved to meet you," he whispered to the baby. "She would have loved your mother too. You are going to be just as special as she was." Clara proved to be a spirited child, full of energy and mischief. Malcolm adored his little sister, proudly taking on the role of protective big brother. Willa and Aaron's house was filled with laughter, noise, and love. By the time Malcolm turned 10 and Clara was 4, Aaron made the final payment on his debt. The day he walked out of the bank in Snowflake, having just handed over the last of the money he owed, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he had been carrying for over a decade. He rode home as fast as his horse would carry him, burst through the door and swept Willa into his arms, spinning her around while she laughed and demanded to know what had gotten into him. "I did it," he said, setting her down but keeping his arms around her waist. "I paid it all back. Every last cent. I am truly free, Willa. My debt is paid, my time is served. I am a free man with a clean slate." Willa's eyes filled with happy tears. "I am so proud of you. You have worked so hard for this." "We have worked hard," Aaron corrected. "None of this would have been possible without you. You saved my life in more ways than one." Willa Quinn. That night, after the children were asleep, Aaron and Willa sat on their porch, watching the stars come out over the Arizona desert. Willa was nestled against Aaron's side, his arm around her shoulders, their fingers intertwined. "You ever think about that night?" Aaron asked. "When I collapsed on your doorstep?" "Sometimes," Willa admitted. "I think about how terrified I was seeing all that blood. I thought you were going to die right there on my porch. I would have if not for you. You saved me and you did not even know me. You could have turned me away, left me to die. No one would have blamed you." I could not have lived with myself if I had done that, Willa said. My father always taught me that we help people when they need it, no questions asked. It is what separates us from the animals, he used to say, our capacity for compassion. Your father raised an extraordinary woman. Aaron kissed the top of her head. I am the luckiest man alive. I think I am pretty lucky too, Willa said, smiling up at him. I got you, did not I? As the years continued to pass, the Quinn family flourished. Malcolm grew into a responsible young man, working alongside his father at the ranch and showing a natural talent for managing cattle and horses. When he turned 18, Mr. Blackwell, now in his 70s and looking to slow down, offered Malcolm a junior partnership in the ranch. It was a tremendous opportunity, and Malcolm accepted with the blessing and encouragement of his parents. Clara, at 12, was showing signs of inheriting her mother's skill with a needle. She spent hours helping Willa with sewing projects, her young fingers already surprisingly deft. But she also had her father's adventurous spirit, often convincing Malcolm to take her riding across the desert, exploring the wild land around Snowflake. Willa and Aaron, now in their early 40s, looked at the life they had built with deep satisfaction. Their children were healthy and happy. Their home was paid for and well maintained. They had the respect of their community and the love of good friends. But life, as Willa knew well, was not without its challenges. When Malcolm was 20 and Clara was 14, news reached Snowflake that Dutch Garfield had been killed in a shootout with lawmen near the Mexican border. The entire gang had been wiped out in a coordinated operation by territorial marshals. Aaron received word from the territorial marshal's office that his testimony, given over a decade ago, had been instrumental in tracking down the gang. They thanked him for his cooperation and officially closed his case. There would be no more shadow hanging over him. No more looking over his shoulder wondering if someone from his past might show up seeking revenge. That night, Aaron stood in his yard, looking up at the stars, processing the news. Willa came out to join him, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders against the cool desert night. It is really over, she said quietly. Yes, Aaron agreed. That part of my life is truly finished now. Dutch is gone. The gang is gone. It is all in the past. How do you feel? Willa asked, studying his face in the moonlight. Aaron was quiet for a moment, considering. Relieved, sad maybe, for the young man I was when I joined that gang, so angry and lost, but mostly grateful. Grateful that I got out when I did, that you saved me, that I got a chance to become someone better. He turned to face Willa, taking both her hands in his. Do you know what I remember most about that night? Not the pain of the gunshot, not the fear of dying. I remember your hands, so steady and sure as you worked to save me. I remember your voice, calm and gentle, telling me I would be all right. I remember thinking, even through the pain and delirium, that I had never met anyone like you. And I swore to myself that if I survived, if I made it through, I would find a way to deserve the chance you were giving me. You have more than earned it, Willa said, squeezing his hands. Look at what we have built together. Look at our children, our home, our life. You should be proud, Aaron. I am proud, but I am also humbled, because I know that none of this would exist if you had not opened your door that night, if you had not chosen compassion over fear. You are the foundation that everything else is built on. Willa stepped closer, resting her forehead against his chest. We built it together. I gave you a chance, but you did the hard work of changing, of becoming the man you wanted to be. That was all you, my love. They stood there in the quiet night, holding each other, thinking about the long journey that had brought them to this moment. From a bleeding outlaw collapsed on a doorstep to a family man with a clean conscience and a bright future, Aaron's transformation was complete. The years continued their steady march forward. Malcolm married a sweet-natured young woman named Emily, and they gave Willa and Aaron their first grandchild, a boy they named Aaron after his grandfather. When Aaron held his tiny namesake for the first time, he cried tears of joy, marveling at the circle of life that had brought him to this moment. Clara, true to her independent spirit, did not marry young as most girls in Snowflake did. Instead, at 18, she announced her intention to open her own dress shop, combining what she had learned from her mother with her own creative flair. Willa supported her daughter's ambition wholeheartedly, helping her set up the shop and introducing her to suppliers and customers. Within 2 years, Clara's dress shop was the most popular in the territory, with women traveling from all over to purchase her designs. When Aaron turned 50, Mr. Blackwell retired completely, selling his ranch to Malcolm with Aaron's help. Father and son became business partners, working together to expand the operation and increase its profitability. It was deeply satisfying for Aaron to work alongside his son, to see Malcolm apply the lessons he had taught him about hard work, integrity, and treating people fairly. Willa, at 48, began to slow down her sewing business, taking on only special projects that truly interested her. She spent more time with her grandchildren, of which there were now 3, teaching them to read and telling them stories of the old days. One evening, as Willa and Aaron sat on their porch watching the sunset, a ritual they had maintained for over 25 years of marriage, Willa turned to her husband with a contented smile. "You ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had not been shot that night?" she asked. Aaron considered the question seriously. "I probably would have died during some other robbery or been killed by Dutch eventually. At best, I would have ended up in prison for the rest of my life, old and bitter and alone. There is no version of that life that does not end badly." "So you think being shot was the best thing that ever happened to you?" Willa teased gently. Aaron laughed. "Being shot was terrible, but it brought me to you, and you are absolutely the best thing that ever happened to me. So yes, in a roundabout way, I suppose it was fortunate. Though I would not recommend getting shot as a general life strategy." Willa laughed, that bright, clear laugh that Aaron had fallen in love with over 2 decades ago and still made his heart skip a beat. "Good advice. I will be sure to pass that wisdom on to our grandchildren." "Seriously, though," Aaron said, taking Willa's hand and intertwining their fingers, a gesture that had become automatic over the years. "I think about that night often. How easily things could have gone differently. If you had not been home, if you had been too afraid to help, if I had bled out before you got me inside. There were so many ways that night could have ended in my death. But instead, it was the night my real life began." "Our real lives began," Willa corrected softly. "I was so lonely before you came, Aaron. I did not realize how lonely until suddenly I was not anymore. You gave me as much as I gave you. We saved each other." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange, pink, and purple. The desert air began to cool, carrying the scent of sage and creosote. In the distance, they could hear their grandchildren playing, their laughter ringing clear in the evening air. "We have had a good life," Aaron said eventually. "We have had a wonderful life," Willa agreed. "And we are not done yet. We have many years ahead of us still, God willing." "Many years of this," Aaron said, gesturing to the scene around them. "Our family, our home, each other, I could not ask for anything more." As if on cue, Malcolm appeared around the corner of the house, holding his youngest child, a daughter named Willa after her grandmother. "Pa, Ma, Emily is making supper. She wanted me to invite you to eat with us." "We would love to," Willa said, standing and brushing off her skirt. Aaron stood as well, offering her his arm, which she took with a smile. As they walked to Malcolm and Emily's house, which had been built on the same property as the original Quinn home, Aaron reflected on the strange and wonderful path his life had taken. From outlaw to husband to father to grandfather, each role had taught him something new about himself and the world. But the most important lesson had been taught to him by the woman walking beside him, the woman who had stitched up his wounds and his broken life with equal skill and compassion. She had shown him that people could change, that redemption was possible, that love could transform even the most damaged soul into something whole and good. Dinner that evening was a loud, chaotic affair, with 3 young grandchildren clamoring for attention and everyone talking over each other. Willa sat at the table, watching her family with deep contentment. This was what she had dreamed of all those years ago when she had sat beside Aaron's sick, hoping he would survive. This warmth, this love, this fullness of life. After dinner, as the adults sat talking while the children played, Clara arrived with exciting news. She had been courted for the past year by a young man named Daniel, a lawyer who had moved to Snowflake from Prescott. They had just gotten engaged, and Clara was beaming with happiness. "He is a good man, Papa," Clara said, hugging her father tightly. "He reminds me of you, honest, hard-working, kind." Aaron's eyes misted as he held his daughter. "Then he must be a very good man indeed. I am happy for you, sweetheart. When is the wedding?" "Next spring." "And of course, Mama is making my dress. No one else could possibly do it." Willa smiled, already envisioning the gown she would create for her daughter. "It will be my masterpiece, the most beautiful dress I have ever made." The wedding, when it came the following spring, was indeed a spectacular affair. Clara's dress was a vision of white silk and delicate lace, with tiny pearl buttons down the back and a train that seemed to float behind her as she walked down the aisle. The ceremony was held in the church where Willa and Aaron had married 26 years earlier, and Pastor Williams, now ancient but still sharp, performed the service. Aaron walked his daughter down the aisle with tears streaming openly down his face. When he handed Clara off to Daniel, he whispered, "Take care of her. She is my heart." "I will, sir," Daniel promised. "I will spend my life making her happy." At the reception held at the ranch, Willa and Aaron danced together to the music of a small band Malcolm had hired. They moved together with the ease of long practice, their bodies knowing each other so well that they hardly had to think about the steps. "Another milestone," Willa said, resting her head on Aaron's shoulder as they swayed. "Our baby girl married." "Time moves too fast," Aaron said. "It feels like just yesterday I was teaching her to ride her first pony. Now she is a married woman with her own life." That is the way of things. Children grow up, they make their own families, and we get to watch and be proud of what they become. "I am proud," Aaron said, "of both our children. Of you, of the life we have built together." "I am proud too," Willa said. "Especially of you. Look how far you have come, Aaron Quinn, from a wounded outlaw to the most respected man in Snowflake. You have earned every bit of that respect." "I had a good teacher," Aaron said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "The best." As the years rolled on, the Quinn family continued to grow and flourish. Malcolm and Emily had 2 more children, and Clara and Daniel had 3. The original Quinn house, where everything had begun that fateful night, became the gathering place for the entire family, especially on holidays and special occasions. Willa and Aaron aged gracefully, their hair turning silver but their love remaining as strong as ever. They were a fixture in Snowflake, the couple everyone knew and respected. People still told the story of how they met, though over the years it had become somewhat romanticized, with some of the harder details glossed over. Aaron never forgot the man he had been, the mistakes he had made. He kept those memories close, not as punishment, but as a reminder of how blessed he was to have been given a second chance. He made a point of talking to young men in town who were heading down wrong paths, sharing his own story in the hopes that it might prevent someone else from making the same mistakes. Willa continued to be a source of strength and wisdom in the community. Women came to her for advice on everything from child rearing to marriage troubles. She listened without judgment and offered counsel drawn from her own experiences. She had learned that life was rarely simple, that people were complex and flawed, and that compassion was often the most powerful force for change. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Malcolm and Clara threw their parents a party that seemed to include the entire town of Snowflake. There was music and dancing, food and drink, and speech after speech praising Willa and Aaron's love and dedication to each other and their family. When it came time for Aaron to speak, he stood with Willa beside him, his arm around her waist, and looked out at the gathered crowd. 30 years ago, I married the woman who saved my life, he began, his voice strong despite his age. I was not a good man then. I had done things I was deeply ashamed of, things that could have sent me to the gallows. But Willa looked past all that. She saw not what I was, but what I could be. And she loved me enough to help me become that better man. He turned to look at Willa, his eyes shining with emotion. Everything good in my life stems from the moment you opened your door and chose to help a stranger. Our children, our grandchildren, this community we are part of, it all exists because you had compassion when you could have had fear. You taught me what love really means. Not just a feeling, but a choice you make every day to stand by someone, to support them, to believe in them even when they do not believe in themselves. Willa was crying openly now, and there was hardly a dry eye in the crowd. I have loved you for 30 years, Aaron continued, and I will love you for 30 more if God grants us that time. You are my heart, my home, my everything. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for building this beautiful life with me. He pulled her close and kissed her, to the applause and cheers of everyone gathered. Willa and Aaron were granted those 30 more years, and then some. They lived to see their grandchildren grow up and start families of their own, giving them great-grandchildren to spoil and delight in. They remained active in the Snowflake community well into their 70s, though they gradually slowed down, spending more time on their beloved porch, watching the world go by. Aaron passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 83, with Willa holding his hand. His last words to her were, "Thank you for every day. I love you." Willa mourned deeply, but she did not let grief consume her. She knew Aaron would want her to keep living, to keep finding joy in their children and grandchildren and the life they had built together. She lived another 5 years, surrounded by family, telling stories of the old days and making sure everyone knew the story of how she and Aaron had met, how love and compassion could transform lives. When Willa finally passed at 88, the entire town of Snowflake turned out for her funeral. She was laid to rest beside Aaron in the cemetery on the hill, the same cemetery where her father was buried. Their headstone bore a simple inscription, Aaron and Willa Quinn. Beloved husband and wife, parents and grandparents, their love was a light that still shines. Years later, Malcolm and Clara would tell their own children and grandchildren about their parents, about the wounded outlaw who collapsed bleeding on a doorstep and the brave woman who saved him. They would tell them how love could heal even the deepest wounds, how compassion could change the course of a life, how two people who should never have met built a family, and a legacy that would endure for generations. And in the telling and retelling, Aaron and Willa's love story became part of the fabric of Snowflake itself, a reminder that everyone deserves a second chance, that love is the most powerful force in the world, And that sometimes the best things in life begin with the simple choice to help someone in need. The house where it all began still stood, maintained lovingly by the Quinn family, a monument to where their story had started. And on quiet evenings, if you stood on that old porch and listened carefully, you could almost hear the echo of two voices, laughing and talking as the desert sun set, planning a future full of love and hope and infinite possibility.